about all the wines you're going to taste tonight. Thanks, Deanna, for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us on. Sorry, I keep admitting people. I'm sitting here in Healdsburg. It's who thought that we would be, when we first started doing Zooms in February, March last year, that we'd still be doing them now, almost a year later. So I've really enjoyed doing them because it's actually allowed me to get out and meet customers, consumers actually. That's been a real breakthrough for me. So I actually quite love this format. So the big thing for me though is if you ever come out to California, Northern California, we would love to host you. We'd love to see you because that's, you know, wine to me is about stories. And I've been, as Susan admitted, yes, I have been making wine since my first vintage was 1982. I am from New Zealand. If you want to see the America's Cup, that's where you got to come. I left New Zealand in 85-ish and went to Australia, studied in Australia for a while. After a couple of degrees in New Zealand, came to California in 89, and I've been here ever since after some other interludes. So I was a corporate winemaker for 25 years. So I was the chief winemaker for Louis Vuitton. Louis Vuitton owned Chandon, Moet, Veuve Clicquot, Dom Perignon, etc. But they also owned Simi. So I was a winemaker at Simi Winery for 15 years. And during that time, we also sold once to Constellation in 1999. And so I was the chief winemaker for a very small group of wineries at Constellation at the time called Icon Estates, which included Franciscan Estancia, Blackstone and Ravenswood. And then in 2002-3, I left and went to the largest wine company in the world called Allo Tamac. So we had wineries in 7 countries. I looked after 58 wineries of those. It was a big job, but it was a lot of fun. And today I'm still friends with a lot of those winemakers. Most of our work was in Spain, but it took me back into Argentina where I'd been with LVMH. And then we got sold to Jim Beam, and then we got sold to Constellation. I got my job back. So I've only ever had 2 jobs, but we just kept getting sold. And so in 2008, we went out on our own because at that time, if you recall, the industry or the economy was in a bit of a turmoil in 2008. And so a lot of small family growers were getting dropped by large corporations. And so we decided that we would try and find a route to market for some of these growers that I've been working with for a long time. The problem with them was that they're only, 5 acres, 10 acre, 20 acre pieces. And so not a lot of ability to find a way to get to market or sell their wine. So the reason why we have a number of SKUs or a number of wines is because we have a number of single vineyards that I work with. So that's how it all came to be. So today I still consult in 6 countries, and most of my time is spent in South America, Chile and Argentina primarily. In fact, I'm just arranging my trip today to go back to Chile. Believe it or not, I'm going to go back there at the end of February. And unfortunately, I have not been able to get to New Zealand and Australia because of the lockdown, or Canada, which is another country that I work in. But I have been here in California for some time, driving my family crazy. We have 5 children, of which 4 of them have moved home during COVID, and a son-in-law. So it's been very interesting. I don't know if you guys, from my personal family standpoint, it's been very interesting. I never thought that I'd be living with my adult children. And yeah, it's been really cool. Tell you what, I figured out that the average white guy lives to 84, and I'm 58. So I've got 19,700 days left. So if I drink one shitty bottle of wine, that's like throwing a good bottle of wine against the wall. Well, I figured out that if you have adult children living at home, you can actually get through 4 or 5 bottles a night. So I'm actually ahead of the curve. So I started off COVID with 4,000 bottles in my wine cellar. I think I'm below 3 now. So it's been very good, very, very big work task that we've all put in place, but it's been a lot of fun. All right, so I'm going to, I'm a vineyard guy that became a winemaker. But if you've got any questions at all about anything other than politics, religion, or what's the third one? Can't remember. I'm happy to answer. So please feel, if you want to talk about fires or malolactic or what's happening in New Zealand, we can do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to just run through So let's see if I get this to work. So yeah, I just want to thank you guys for putting us on, and sipping in place has become quite a commonality around here. And I'm still sitting here in Healdsburg, which is a beautiful, we're well away from Southern California where we've had the issues, as you know. So the wines that we're going to taste tonight are the Singing Tree from Russian River. It's a Chardonnay. And then we're going to taste 3 wines that I make with my daughters. I don't make wines with my sons. We can talk about that too if you want. So the labels that we have for Singing Tree, and the one that you're tasting tonight is the one on the left, which Susan can be Vanna tonight. I do have the wines in front of me, but if you want to see the wines, I can't even see myself on the screen. I can only see some of you guys. So this is the wine that you're tasting, and the, thank you, Susan. The tree is in my backyard. So I live on a vineyard, but I also live on the river. I live on Dry Creek River, and those trees squawk like crazy at this time of year. For some reason, they all come and roost right by the river. And so instead of calling it the squawking tree, we call it the singing tree. But even though I was at Simi for such a long time, Simi in the early 90s was really a Chardonnay house with a little bit of Cabernet. By the time I left, it was a Cabernet house with some Chardonnay. So I've known Chardonnay for a long time, and I still think it's probably the wine that I love to make the best. But we'll talk about that. So where we are, this is why you should come visit Wine Country. So this is San Francisco down here. This is 101, beautiful little town of Healdsburg, which of course is the center of the universe. And to the south, this blue area, this is what we call the Russian River. This is Sonoma Coast. This is Dry Creek where I live. This is Alexander Valley. This is Chalk Hill. So you can see we have 4 appellations all meet in the middle of Healdsburg, and we have 280 wineries in Healdsburg. Well, we did before COVID. And so the vineyard that we're going to be tasting tonight comes from down here, which is called Singing Tree. This is a little picture of the vineyard. This is the 2 blocks that we get. We share this vineyard with Kokomo, which is a direct only wine. And we also share it with Papa Pietro, which is a pretty famous winery, and Costa Brown. So it's a pretty cool site that we work with. The reason, the thing is, I didn't want to make, the problem to me, Deanna, and you know this because you're in retail, but every Chardonnay that I taste tastes the same. And the reason being is that in 1989, 1990, all the vineyards were replanted because we had phylloxera. And it's a long, convoluted story, but basically today, everything that's planted is a clone. So the definition of a clone, and it's hard for Susan to figure this out because she's from Minnesota, is the definition of a clone as you know who your mother is. So you can trace everything back to one plant. And so how diverse is that? So pre-1990, we had these things called field selections or mass selections. So these were cuttings that were taken around vineyards, and I'll come off here for a minute. So these were vineyards that we didn't have nurseries. Like you guys know, we have nurseries today. You just pop on down to the local nursery and you can buy a tree. Well, back in the 90s, back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that wasn't the case. You developed your own plants yourself. So what you would do, and I wish I'm doing pruning right now. I'm in my vineyards every day, so I should actually have a cutting. But basically, if you can imagine this as a stick, that I take at this time of year, it has 3 buds on it. And what we could do is we can take a knife and we chip that bud out. This is called a chip bud. So we take a knife, we cut that bud off that stick, and then we take the rootstock. And you guys know what a rootstock is, because today when you go down the nursery and you buy a plant, you'll notice that you have 2 parts to the plant. You have the rootstock and the scion, S-C-I-O-N. And you'll notice there's a little bubble here or a swelling, and that's where the 2 plants meet. And the reason they use a rootstock today is because they want to have plants that are resistant to nematodes, because you guys all have nematodes in your gardens. You don't know it. You also want to have resistance to drought or other things that make plants susceptible. So in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we had a rootstock called AXR1, which we didn't know too much about, but the French had sold it to us, of course. Any French people here? French, Portuguese, Australians, or British. They're the 4 nationalities I normally upset. So the French had sold us another lie. They told us that this was Vitis Nebraska, Vitis Blanderi, Vitis vinifera is what you guys know as Chardonnay, Cabernet, and Merlot, whatever. But Vitis Nebraska is the rootstock that's resistant to phylloxera. So when we put these field selections on top, everything was fantastic. And we had really good compatibility because these things, you know, you go to family reunions to pick up chicks, right? So that's exactly what this was. These things were related. They were the same family. And so we didn't have any problems. But when we had to get rid of AXL1 because we discovered it wasn't resistant to phylloxera, we had to go into the vineyard again and we had to select for different reasons. We had to select for non-virus status. So we collected, you know, we found one plant that for some reason didn't show any virus, and that became clone 1. So all the cuttings came from that one plant. And then we had this thing called meristem tissue culture, which is complicated, but you take a leaf, you split the veins on the leaf and you grow a plant on an agar plate, and you take the tip, you grow that, you take the tip, you grow that, and you're outgrowing the virus, and that became clone 2. So the definition is everything comes from one plant, and the diversity is very, very minimal. And that's why all the Chardonnay today tastes like white peach. If somebody gets my Chardonnay and says, Nick, your Chardonnay smells of white peach, I'm like, dude, I'm out of here. Because I don't care if it's a Dijon clone from France or a UC Davis clone from California, they all taste the same. And so that's why I never wanted to make Chardonnay again. So, however, I knew that there was about 5 vineyards that were still planted on AXL1. And so I went out and I talked to those owners, and one of those owners is the owner of Singing Tree. And so this vineyard is completely diverse. One vine tastes of pineapple, one vine tastes of muscat, one vine tastes of white peach, one vine tastes of apple, one, you know. So there's a huge diversity across the whole vineyard. And this is what we call a mass selection or a field selection. Does that kind of make sense? Did I bore you? Did I lose you? Okay. Let me show you graphically what that means. So the reason why this vineyard exists is because, can you see that?
No, not yet.
Okay. Let me see. Sorry, guys, I had it open twice. All right. So the reason why this vineyard exists is because it's on a Goldridge sandy loam. So this is like a talcum powder. You'll see a photo in a minute. It's made from these old field selections. We use native fermentation. These wines are all vegan, and we do a fair amount of concrete ferment. So we were making wines in concrete back in 1982, but suddenly it's became really cool. I didn't even know what a barrel was till I came to California in 1989. I mean, everything we did was in large wood tanks or concrete. So yeah, so it shows how fast the industry has evolved. So this is a Goldridge sandy loam. You can see it's basically a talcum powder soil. This is what we look at when we consider field selections. You can see big berries and small berries in the same cluster. If we were talking about a clone, every berry would be the same. And then the third thing that's really cool is this vineyard is old. Okay, so we all talk about old vine Zinfandel. Sometimes we talk about old vine Cabernet, but we never talk about old vine Chardonnay, but that's exactly what this is. And so this brings its own uniqueness. You can see these large cuts that were made way back. The difference between a mass selection or a field selection and a clone is basically clones were selected because they produce larger yields and they accumulate sugar faster, so you can pick it earlier. And that is certainly not what we want to do when it comes to fine winemaking. Stylistically, if we look at Chardonnay today, if we talk about structure of the wine, if you look at my, I don't know, can you see my face? I don't know if you can. Yeah. But if you talk about a structure of a wine, when you drink a wine, it comes in the mouth kind of lean. It comes in broad and then has this leanness. That's a structural wine. A textural wine is a wine that comes in the mouth and finishes with fatness and weight. So if you were to graph structure against texture, and then if you think about warm fruit versus cool fruit, so these are all these mass selection that I was telling you about: pineapple, melon, stone fruit, pip fruit, citrus, and grassy as we get colder. If you drink a Chardonnay straight off the shelf today, most of your wines are going to be sort of in this mid-range for Russian River. But because the Singing Tree is made from C, S-E-E, which is an old field selection, you're going to get more of this melon character, and you're going to get a little bit more structure. And I like structure in Chardonnay. I think that Chardonnay today is too fat, too sweet, too broad. When I drink Chardonnay, I want my mouth to go, shit. You know, I want to drink that wine and go, oh man, am I awake or what? You know, am I hungry or thirsty? And that's really the key. I mean, I can sell you one glass of wine. Anyone can, even Susan could sell you one glass of wine. But can I sell you 2 glasses? And that's the key. You know, do you want to go back and drink that second glass? And you've got to add something. You've got to be perky. You've got to be bright. I mean, this thing is food. This is fruit. This is not alcohol. It's not wood. It's not acidity. It's not sugar. This is a living, breathing substance, and we have to have it be interesting. And so hopefully that's what we do. We do make a reserve Chardonnay, which we're not going to talk about today, but it's a completely different style again, which we make a single vineyard from Dutton.
Picking Chardonnay out here in the Russian River today. The guys are sorting through it. Beautiful, beautiful old vineyard. We're just wrapping up here, and should get this fruit into the vineyard at the winery in the next hour or so. It'll be fantastic. This is some of the best Chardonnay that we make, and you can see we've got big berries and small berries going in the same cluster, and this is what mass selection Chardonnay is all about. It's beautiful, beautiful fruit. Little melon and subtropical characters will come from this. Fantastic. No clones here, no clones.
I'm not going to talk too much about malolactic because Susan gets bored with it. But basically, people always go, "Oh, how much malolactic is in your wine?" Well, it's a big chemical, confusing thing. So I can make a wine buttery with no malolactic, and I can make a wine that's acidic and bright with 100% malolactic. So there's a couple of things that people always ask you: how much alcohol is in your wine? How much malolactic is in your wine? How much wood is in your wine? And I always go, well, what do you think? Because unless you understand all the chemistry, it's crazy. So yes, it's a bacterial ferment. It's not a yeast ferment. And this, by the way, this is a bacteria that you can eat. It's not Jack in a Box. Okay, so this is something that's useful. And also it's depending on when you add it and all that sort of carry on. And all red wine goes through malolactic as well. Anyway, so this is the Singing Tree that you're trying right now, got 91 points, and this is the Dutton, which we're not showing you. So yeah, any questions, you guys?
Yeah, Nick, could you go back one more time through texture versus structure and the difference between those?
Yeah, so the things that, this is a big, we as winemakers, we sit around and we go, it's a little bit more acidic, it's a little sweet, it's a little alcoholic. Well, basically, there's 4 things that make a wine more structural. Carbon dioxide, which of course because that's in sparkling wine. Acid, total acidity, which is natural and great. Wood, so if we add more wood, we add more structure. And then the temperature that you serve the wine at. So those 4 things are making that wine tight. Does that make sense? Okay, things that are making the wine fat, malolactic. We don't want to get too much into that, but if you want to, you can make malolactic help to make the wine fat. Fruit, because when you drink wine that doesn't have any wood or anything on that, all you get this big, rich mouthfeel. Sugar, of course. And you guys, we don't need to talk about sugar. You guys come from America, so we all drink sugar. And alcohol. So those things are making the wine sweeter. Oh, and pH, which is not the same as total acidity. So it's a battle. So when you're sitting there tasting through the barrel, through the processing or through the aging, we're always talking about, is the wine more structural? Is it more textural? Do we want to move it one way or the other? And we can do that through experience or through different techniques, etc. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, they're very helpful. Thank you.
I can always draw it for you. Any other questions on Chardonnay? I mean, for a single vineyard Russian River Chardonnay, what are you selling it for in Vino Mas?
So can you, normal price is $22.95.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so normally this wine would be between $25 and $30. You're not going to find many single vineyard Russian Chards for that price, because growing grapes out here, I know that it's really hard to relate to, but we live in a very expensive state. And we as growers have not, basically as growers, our income is about the same as it was 20 years ago in terms of growing grapes. The problem, the reason why grapes have become more expensive is because our minimum wage has gone up about $8 an hour in those 20 years. And all the legalities of hiring people has become extremely expensive as well. So basically we have one person on our staff just making sure everyone's legal. I mean, it's become very, very difficult. So even though our costs have remained steady, or our income has remained steady, land prices have gone up, insurance, I don't know if you know, but if you've been following after the fires, the insurance has gone absolutely crazy. Some wineries will not be able to get insurance anymore. And yeah, a lot of the uncontrollable costs have gone up, and that's why wine continues to go up in price. I also think globally, I mean, let's face it, I can make more money growing cherries or avocados. Grapes is you do grapes because you love grapes and you love wine and you love the industry. You don't do it for profitability. Any other questions? Or else we'll start talking about my kids.
You
Right.
mentioned your wine was vegan.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Because aren't all wines vegan?
No. So you have to be, if you are vegan, you need to be very careful. And in fact, if you are vegan, you're probably not going to be able to buy very inexpensive wine, because the Greeks, we blame the Greeks for a lot of things in the wine industry. Of course, if they had invented a screw cap, we would all be using screw cap, but because they invented a cork, we all use cork, and I hate cork, and it is what it is. But one of the things the Greeks discovered was when they were moving wine around, believe it or not, there was a fish called a sturgeon fish. Now, a sturgeon fish is a very unusual bladder. When they take the bladder out of the sturgeon fish, they could fill it up with wine and it would expand. It was this big vessel. And when they transported the wine from place to place inside the swim bladder of the sturgeon fish, when they arrived at their location, the wine was clean. And they couldn't work this out. So then some Greek, Caesar or whoever he was, some Roman, he decided he'd throw the sturgeon bladder into the tank. And sure enough, that wine became clean. And so then they discovered that blood was really interesting, milk, and a lot of other animal products that if they added to wine, actually helped the wine clean and soften the wine, soften the tannins. And so a lot today, traditionally in France, of course, they use egg whites. You may or may not have heard of egg whites. So a lot of French wine, they add 1 egg white per barrel or 2 egg whites per barrel, and this still goes on today. Isinglass, which is the swim bladder of the sturgeon fish, is still largely used. Some people use a lot of milk, but all these are animal products, and they're natural products, but that does not make the wine vegan. And I can tell you there are some very famous wineries that are not vegan. And if I walk into your store today, in fact, there's not many of us that are making wine vegan. And I've been making our wine vegan since we started in 2008. I've never added any fining agent to any of our wine. Did I answer your question? I guess we could put it on the label.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, the main thing is it clarifies it, cleans it up, like Nick.
Yeah, it clarifies it, but it also softens young wines. But I don't know, man. I like impurities in wine. I like wines to be slightly off. It's because it's a point of conversation. Look, I made beer for years. I made beer for 3 years commercially. I made wine all day, and I worked for a mate of mine. He had a brewery, a very successful brewery at night. Guess what? When you arrive to work to make beer, guess what you're going to do? It's the same as what you did yesterday. It's the same as what you did the day before. And it's the same as what you can do tomorrow.
Okay.
When you drink vodka, when you make vodka, I mean, the last thing you want is to have it taste different. The thing about wine is we wanted to have it taste different every year. I mean, wine is a story. You know, I want to have this wine taste like a 2018. I want to have this wine taste like when I smell this, I want to go, you know what? It's a little fuller. That's a little richer. That's going to be a 2018, whereas 17 is going to be a little bit more acidic. 16 is going to be a little bit fatter. 20, so it's a living, breathing evolution. It's a story, and we get to tell it every year. It's cool, you know. I don't want to be bored, so I want to have everything just be a little bit complicated, a little bit sort of off the chart. But I do want, if you like my 2017 and then you go and buy a bottle of the 2018, I want you to realize that it's still in the same vein. I mean, I want it to be in the same style. And just hopefully the quality will be a little bit better every year. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. How do you feel about natural wines?
Okay, natural. All of our wines are natural. I mean, what is the definition of a natural wine? So people, I find that a very hard. I crush the grapes. I don't add any yeast. I don't add any acid. I don't add any water, and then I bottle it. I don't know how more natural I can get. The only thing that I've seen people use the word natural to justify having a hazy wine. So the wine is not completely clear. I find that inexcusable. You should not sell a wine that is hazy. I disagree that because it's a natural wine, therefore it's hazy. No, I can make you a completely clean wine with no haze in it at all. In fact, if you have a hazy wine, it actually adds to astringency, and I don't like it. The second thing that people assume is natural is not using any preservative of sulfur dioxide, SO2. Sulfur dioxide is a naturally occurring product. When a yeast ferments sugar to alcohol, it actually produces SO2 because the yeast is trying to kill other yeast. So the dominant yeast produces this SO2, which destroys the other yeast that may be competing for the same sugar. So it's a natural. So what is natural? I don't know. If somebody can argue with me about what a natural or an unnatural wine is, I can name you areas where it makes the wine unnatural. I can argue that. I can tell you that, you know, some wineries would use sulfuric acid. Some wineries would use other chemicals to adjust wine, etc., which is totally legal. That's a totally unnatural process. I agree with that. But to say something is natural versus unnatural, man, I have a real problem with that. I don't believe a natural wine is an excuse for poor quality. Anyway, this wine is natural. I don't know how to make it unnatural. It's unfined, it's unfiltered. But you know, as wines age, you sometimes see that crusty stuff here. Okay, that's an interesting conversation, because as wines move from purple to red to brown to orange, especially at Total Beverage, support your small independent retailer.
Yay.
Don't go to Total. Yeah, support the small guys, man. I'm a small guy. Support the small people, the small family businesses. That's what we want. Get down to Vino Mas and order some more wine. But if you drink my wines from my first vintage in 1998, if you drink my forefathers Cabernet from 1998, it's still purple. You don't get any crusty stuff here, because when you get crusty stuff, that's polymeric pigment. As the wines move from purple to red to brown to orange, that compound, this core compound is an anthocyanin. This is purple. If you remember back to your maltodextrin 3 glucosides and your flavanols when you're at school, you guys all remember that? Your chemistry? Come on, loosen up. You remember this stuff. We'll get your kids to teach it. Right, so this compound, this maltodextrin 3 glucoside, is a carbohydrate. It's called an anthocyanin. It's purple. This anthocyanin floats around in your wine glass or in your tank, joins onto another one, and this is a tannin. This is red. If you provide more heat, light, air, and time, this compound gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Crusty shit. That's what's falling out in your wine. So unless it's the year you got married, the year you were born, the year of your first child, the year you got divorced, the year 2020 when the country went to hell, get rid of it. That polymeric pigment is not just color, but it's flavor and tannin and everything else that makes that wine. Tannin is what makes a wine live. When that stuff is starting to fall out, it's trash. So in my natural wines, that won't happen. I figured out a way through our process, through my extraction on skins, to make sure those wines are stable. And you won't get crusty stuff hanging out on the sides of my bottles. You'll see the wine move from purple to red, but our wines won't turn brown to orange till well after I've left this planet.
Well, Nick, that brings up a question.
Yes, Mike.
How long will you store a red wine for, assuming, and I don't even know what I want to tell you about temperature, but let's just say in a basement and it stays in the mid 60s, okay? I'm listening.
How long does it last for?
Well, how long would it be good for?
Well, the key thing, isn't it amazing that they sell bottles in 12 bottle packs?
Yes, it is.
So what you do is you buy a case and you drink one every month and call me.
Okay, I can do that. But I'm sitting on, actually, I'm sitting
Tell me which month it tasted the best. But
Well,
look, I know what you're asking, Mike. I'm being sarcastic. But
No, so am I.
the key thing is, if the wine, there's many different ways to skin this cat. Look, when I go into a restaurant or when I go into a wine store and I buy a bottle of wine, what do? I buy something that I know. I usually, because I'm a winemaker, I know a lot of people. So I buy a wine from somebody that I know. And if I'm in a strange country where I don't know the area, I will buy a variety or an appellation that I know, because to me, life is about stories. So Mike, if you came out and visited me, I'm sure that when you go back to your home, you're gonna drink my wine and you're gonna say, hey, I remember meeting Nick. I had a good time. Hopefully, I drank his wine with him, and he told me the story about this and that and this and that, and that wine is great. But if you just walk into a store and buy 6 bottles and you have no point of reference, and then you open them all and you go, you know what? I like this one. I don't like that one. It has a completely different relationship. And then you stick it in your wine cellar and you'd open up after 10 years and go, Christ, what was I thinking? You have to know.
Sure.
To me, it's really hard to describe it.
You've actually answered my question. I'm sitting on a couple of cabs that are 12 years old, and I liked them at the time. I'm just waiting to see where they go. And I didn't. You had a rule of thumb at all or not?
Well, my first question would be, who's the producer? What appellation is it from, and what vintage is it?
Okay.
So that all has a big difference. Here's an example for you. So a mate of mine calls me up and goes, Christ, man, I just had a bottle of your Singing Tree Chardonnay. It tastes like shit. I said, why? What happened? He goes, well, the first bottle, I said, when did you have the first bottle? Oh, it was a Friday night. I just came home from work. I just asked my wife to marry me. We popped the bottle of Singing Tree Chardonnay. It was the best one I'd ever had in my life. Oh, when did you have the second one? Well, it was Monday night. I had a fight with my wife. I'd come home from a hard day at work. Christ, it was awful. So the point of reference of when you drink the wine and who you're with is also important. So, there's so many things that go in. I mean, isn't it amazing? I mean, it's classic. It happens to me all the time, but I'm very wary of it now. Like, so you go to a foreign country. I'm in Vienna 2 years ago now. So you go there and you're sitting there and you're drinking Gruner that you've never had before, and it was fantastic. You're sitting there looking at the river, and you're in a great cafeteria drinking this wine, and everything is great. You come back to California, you go to the store, it's not quite the same vintage. The label's it's not exactly the same label, but it's the producer. You take it home, you drink it, awful. And that's because you weren't sitting in Vienna drinking this stuff. So I don't know, man. It's complicated.
No, I get it. You must have been with me 4 years ago when we were in Vienna. So it tastes a little bit different back in Omaha, Nebraska. Thanks for the time.
No problem. All right. So I have I'm gonna lead off with this because I'm gonna tell the story that, so in the year, which year shall I make up? You know, it's all fake stories. No. So in 2000, I'm explaining to my children what it's like to make wine without electricity. So I was living in Chile in 1988, 89 when Pinochet was in power. Now, I don't know if you've lived in the countries where you have dictators. The way dictators control people is they cut off food, they cut off oil, and in the worst case situation, they cut off electricity. When you cut off electricity, it's very hard to make wine. So I was telling my kids how you make wine without power. So, you know, we put the hoses in the, we get a generator, but the generators aren't big enough to run a winery by any means. But we have enough power basically to cool a tank. Maybe we put the hoses in a canal to try and get the cold water to slow the fermentations down. We'd have to light fires if we wanted to add yeast to a tank because it's the only way to get hot water and things. And, you know, my kids are like, yeah, right, whatever, Dad. So I said, watch. So in 2000, we went out, we picked half a ton of grapes between the 6 of us, my 5 kids and myself. And I had a picture up here of one of those days. Anyway, we handy stemmed it. So handy stemming was very laborious. Pigeage, punch down, we basket pressed it at the end. It was all done by hand. We did put it in a warehouse. We hand pumped it into a barrel. We did put it in a warehouse for a year, and then we brought it out and we bottled it, and we called it 5 Gold Hands Unplugged. 5 gold hands, Goldschmidt, hands, my 5 kids, unplugged, no electricity. So great family project. And then in 2002, Chelsea said she would like to make wine with me. So this is her. I'm sorry, I spilled. The reason why I'm drinking this bottle is I destroyed the label. But anyway, when she was 2, I traced around her head and she colored it in, and that's where the label comes from. And so we did improve the labels a little bit 2 years ago, just to give the girls a little bit more hair because they're getting older now. So Chelsea's still, you're going to see Chelsea in a little video here a little bit later. But the other cool story is if you line all 3 bottles up, I don't know if you guys have got all 3 bottles in front of you, but I do. And I'm going to shoot down to this in a second here. So if you look at these bottles, this is Chelsea, Catherine, and Hillary, you'll notice something different. Anyone notice anything? Well, Catherine faces a different direction on the label. Do you notice? Yes. Okay. So how many fathers are in the audience tonight? How many fathers are out there? Okay. What's the worst phone call you could ever have in your life? This is it. This is what happens. You get a phone call from your wife and all you hear is, honey, I'm too drunk. I can't go to the parent-teacher night at school. This is a lose-lose situation because you're going to go along to the school and your wife has just spent 10 years, you know, supporting the family, looking after and you're going to rock up. And of course, the first thing the teacher's going to do is criticize your child and you're going to go, bullshit, not true. She's the greatest kid, you know, but there's obviously something wrong with you. And of course, that's going to go straight to the headmaster and back to your wife. Anyway, nice thumbs up, Vino, I like it. So what happened was it was a life-changing experience. I walked into the room with a mate of mine. He got the same phone call from his wife like 2 seconds after me, which is very funny. So we walk into the room and they broke the room up on firstborns, secondborns, thirdborns, twins, and lastborns. So I'm sitting at the big boy table. I had to learn how to do this because it's not a firstborn trait. Firstborns are not usually speakers. I did stand up for a couple of years just so I could learn how to like speak, hopefully normally. But what do firstborns do? So the first thing a firstborn, so at the table, everyone had a piece of paper in front of them. And on the paper was a bunch of questions. Now, what are firstborn? How many firstborns are on screen? Okay, you guys know what I'm talking about. Oh, lastborn. So first and last. Who the first and last? Who's first or last? Okay, about 30%. So that's unusual, you middle children. This is all about you. So the, and only children. So there's a list of questions. So the firstborns, we don't introduce ourselves. We don't say hello. We don't make eye contact. We go straight to the questions. We start answering the question. At the bottom, it says elect a spokesperson for the group. What do firstborns think? You firstborns know exactly what you're going to think. You're going to say, if no one volunteers, I'll volunteer. So I waited 20 seconds. I put my hand up to volunteer along at exactly the same time as the other 13 firstborns. The secondborns are like, hey, could we get a firstborn over here? The thirdborns are like, what was the question? Because they're all, you know what middle children are like, they're all still talking about themselves. And then the lastborns were like, we ordered cheeseburger, we don't even know why we're here. And I see this in my 5 children. So this is why Catherine faces the other way on the label, because you know what middle children are like? You firstborns and lastborns know what this is like, right? Middle children, liars, manipulators, bullshit artists, think outside the box. They will argue that they're creative, implementive, they're peacemakers. Yes, you're peacemakers because you're totally manipulative. That's what firstborns are like. So that's why Kate faces the other direction on the label, and she still barely notices, because middle children are amazing. And Kate has turned out to be just this incredible daughter. She's the glue of the family, just incredible and completely different. She's the only one not doing science. Well, pure science. She's a vet tech. So she's not chemistry, math. Anyway, so that's why she faces the other direction on the label, and she's a unique one. All right, any questions? I'm going to go into the wines now that I've sucked up a lot of time here. Where do I go? Come on, get out of here. So these are the labels you'll see. Obviously, Catherine faces a different direction. Where we are in the, firstly, let's look at the Alexander Valley. So this is the Russian River. This is the other important feature. This is Fitch Mountain. So the river comes around Fitch Mountain, and then, sorry, I'm going to jump off here. I think somebody else is trying to get in. Okay. So the Russian River formed the Napa Valley, but at some prehistoric moment, Mount St. Helena was lifted up and Mount St. Helena blocked off the Russian River, and that's why the Russian River now flows out to Jenner through the Russian River Valley. We are mainly on the east-facing vineyards. We like morning sun, so the sun comes in this direction. Morning sun is more important than afternoon sun because this is very hot over here. We do have these vineyards here to the south west, but each one of these is on a little knoll, which we'll talk about a little bit later. These are my 5 children. This is Catherine that I was talking about earlier. This is my front yard. So what you're trying is Chelsea. This is the Guidestone Rise vineyard. It's 100% Merlot, and Susan's holding it up. Thank you, Vanna. The key thing is Merlot is still the #1 red grape in the world. People drink Cabernet because they get told to drink Cabernet, but Merlot is actually more interesting for me than Cabernet. Obviously, we make a lot of Cabernet, but I don't know if you can see me on screen, but the greenest, most aromatic variety for red is a variety called Carmenere. Now, if you haven't had a Carmenere, make sure you get down to Vino Mas and try one, but spend a little bit of money on it. You know, buy a Carmenere for $25. And just see if you like it. I mean, they're very aromatic, very green, but they're very sweet and round and rich. The second greenest variety is Sauvignon Blanc. The third greenest variety is Cabernet. So by making Cabernet at 15 alcohol, what we've done is we've removed all the varietal character. If you don't like drinking green wine or slightly herbal or slightly peppery wine, drink Merlot. I mean, Pomerol is not exactly that bad. Haut-Brion is not bad. Petrus is not bad. These are all made from Merlot. So, and we've had really, Susan will tell you, we've had amazing success with Merlot in recent times. This one got 96 points in a double gold in San Francisco. Oh, sorry, the 17 did. We haven't had actually we had the 18 rated, but I didn't put it up here.
92 wine spectator.
Yeah, 92 from the Spectator. 92 from the Spectator. The 18 just got.
90 or 92?
G'day, Nick Goldschmidt here. I'm standing out here in the Chelsea Merlot vineyard, Alexander Valley. And we are about, I don't know, 70-80% through Veraison. If you can see down here, if I move a few clusters, leaves, I mean, you can see that we're colouring up quite nicely. A little way to go. This is the second week of September that we're looking about in terms of harvest, and that would be about right on average. So looking good. We love the soil here. A lot of good water holding capacity. We've got a long way to go in terms of holding this canopy on, but we're in really good shape and really excited about the 2019 Chelsea Goldschmidt, Alexander Valley, Merlot, out here in the Alexander Valley. Beautiful, love it.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Goldschmidt, and after my workouts, I always crave a nice glass of Merlot. So, I'm obviously drinking my favorite Merlot, the Chelsea Goldschmidt. This one is 2017 from Alexander Valley. Reminds me of back home in Sonoma County while I'm here in isolation in the Bay Area. So let's see how it is. It's the perfect wine for isolation. Drink by yourself, or if you need a glass after spending the day with your family. It's always there. So let's see how it is. Smells like black cherry and pomegranate, some chocolate. Yum. And it tastes like strawberries and plum. It's delicious. I hope you really enjoy it, and I hope it keeps you company in your quarantine. Stay safe, everyone. Cheers.
So yeah, one of the things that I mentioned there was one of the other differences between Cabernet and Merlot is the size of the berry. So Cabernet berry weighs about 0.95 grams, and Merlot berry weighs about 1.2 grams. So the key thing is to make sure you're on a soil that has a little bit of clay, because clay soil holds more water and releases that water gradually during the hot summer. So we can maintain the berry in full turgor. We don't want any if you dehydrate the berry due to lack of water, all you're doing is you're concentrating sugar, acid, and tannin. You end up with a dry monster. So we don't want to have that. The idea is to bring that berry into the winery, and then we can extract the heck out of it, because that would allow us to make this full flavored Cabernet style Merlot. So this Merlot is really full, it's really fleshy, it's very Cabernet-like. So it's quite unique, and that's purely because of the vineyard. And we've been working on this vineyard since 1990, and well, I'll tell a little story a bit later. Okay, so any other questions on Merlot, or else we're just going to jump into Cabernet here. So we make a number of Cabernets. We're going to be talking tonight about Catherine and Hillary. And so the Catherine vineyard, as I pointed out a little earlier, comes from a little valley. It faces east. It's on this little knoll. And the Yeoman vineyard, which is our top vineyard, also faces southeast. It's an old terrace. Piedmont, so we're mid-slope. We're east-facing, pretty low yield because the vineyard is so old. And again, it's all native, etc., that I alluded to earlier. This is an interesting video because I like to show this, because you can see that the reason people ask, well, how do you make a complex wine out of one site? Well, you can see this is the Cabernet vineyard here. You can see how the different soils are. And this is why we make wine in California, because we have earthquakes all the time. And that's what makes California interesting. Same with New Zealand, same with Chile and Argentina. I don't know about Australia and France, but whatever. So you can see that's more vigorous. You can see this is of medium vigor. And then as we come over here, you can see we've got low vigor. So this is what we call the elegant wine, where we have slightly too much crop for the canopy, so we remove crop, the powerful wine, and the dense wine. And I always show this video because this is the last day of existence of this Suburban, which my daughter Hillary wrote off the next day. And she's still paying for her mistake. But anyway, beautiful little black Suburban that we had. But really unique site, really unique vineyard. As far as winemaking, we call it elegant, powerful, and dense. So depending on where it is in the vineyard, depends on the type of extraction that we make. So we make 3 different types of wine from the same vineyard based on how the canopy looks. The vineyard is old. The location is amazing because it's right next to some very famous neighbors. We use old field selections. It's basically a head pruned Cabernet vineyard put on a wire, and then we pick it 3 different ways.
G'day, Nick Goldschmidt here. I'm sitting here with 3 glasses of wine, and everything we do is single vineyard. And the way we get complexity out of a single vineyard is by choosing blocks and styles, or working the wines to the way the vines best exemplify themselves. So when I was young, I walked into a room once at a pretty well-known winery with 200 wines on the table. I'm wondering, how am I going to blend 200 wines? I came from New Zealand, I didn't know anything about Cabernet. And so working with a consultant, we figured out the best way to do this is to put them into families. elegant wines, which are the soft berry fruit wines right up on front of the tongue, the powerful wines which provide the fleshiness and the richness, and the dense wines which give us structure and power. So when we go ahead and line all those wines up, I sorted all the elegant wines together, and I chose the best elegant wines and made a blend. I got the best powerful wines, made a blend, the best dense wines and made a blend, and we had 3 wines, all from the same vineyard, all from maybe in the same block or not the same block, but all from the same vineyard. And then we made a blend of these 3 wines, and it was the most complex wine that we could possibly make. So today I continue that process. With elegant wines, we can extract them a little bit more aggressively because we know that the tannins are in lower concentration than the fruit, so we can extract more tannin. Whereas on a dense wine, if we made wine like that, they become too dry and too tannic. So we lower the extraction and try and make the wines more fruit forward. So if I was to drink an elegant wine, I'm going to get more red cherry, great structure, very forward in the mouth, very, very elegant, very ripe, but good acidity, red fruit, and very forward in the mouth. The powerful wine, I can immediately get it. It's more black cherry, a little bit of walnut. And the mouth is really rich, really full, powerful. Not a lot going on in the front of the mouth, not a lot going on in the structural part of the mouth either. And then the dense wines, much more chocolate, a lot more black cherry, but all finished, very supple tannins, good structure, good acidity. And so when we put the 3 together, hopefully, and it's never 30-30-30, because in a warm vintage, I probably want a little bit more of the dense component, whereas in a cool vintage, I want more of the elegant component. So it really depends on the vintage. And when I put all 3 together, we get the most complex wine we possibly can from the same vineyard. And that's how we make single vineyard wines really complex.
So I hope that covers it. Oh, sorry, I've got one more video to show you, which is pretty funny. So this is our new vineyard that I'm developing. It's called Stonemason Hill, and you'll notice the name's already started appearing on the 2018 label. And this is a photo of the soil that we're dealing with. This is schist, so it's completely different. This is what great vineyards in Bordeaux and some parts of Burgundy are growing on. So I think I've spent years and years looking for the ideal vineyard, and I didn't even know it existed very close to where I was interested in. So beautiful site. So if you get a chance eventually to come on out, it's just an incredible property.
Hi, my name is Catherine Goldschmidt, and this is my wine that my father, Nick Goldschmidt, makes for me. It is a Cabernet, and I like to drink it when I come home after quarantine. You don't get to see very many people, but I make a point for my family to make sure that they're all home for Sunday dinner. And when I come home for Sunday dinner, we drink Catherine because I'm the favorite in the family, and they all know that.
Oh my God.
I'm an RVT by day, but by night I'm a cab drinker. It's one of my favorite cabs. It's got a lot of black cherry. It's very full in the mouth, and it's definitely one of those things that makes you relax at the end of the day, and I'm happy to drink it anytime. Cheers.
So yeah, you guys know what middle children are like. So this is Hillary. She's our youngest child. 2020 was a rough year. The school burnt down in 2017. So and then they had floods, and then they had COVID. So and then they didn't graduate. I mean, it's just been the class of 2020 was a complete disaster. Anyway, so let's jump into Oakville. This is Highway 29. We're heading north to St. Helena. As you come south, you go past this little winery here on your right, which is Faniente. And then you come down, well, what's this very famous, you guys know this winery. This is Mondavi. This is Nickel, and there's Opus, and there's Hillary. Okay, so very famous neighborhood. This is Oakville Cross. And if you drive down Oakville Cross, we have a couple of other vineyards down. This is Screaming Eagle. This is Tench. This is Silver Oak. This is Groth. This is Plumjack. That's Rudd. But anyway, focusing on
But there
Hillary.
is the beautiful Nickel Winery and their vineyard, and that's Hillary down there at that end, and there's Opus, beautiful Opus, out here in the Oakville, getting ready to pick Hillary tomorrow. Cabernet Sauvignon, Oakville, Napa Valley.
So I think it was quite interesting that the Wine Spectator came out and said that Napa Valley will always be worth 5 points more than the Alexander Valley. I have a real problem with that. I mean, Napa Valley is hotter than the Alexander Valley. And so when you drink Alexander Valley wines, you typically get more red fruit, you get a little bit more bright red fruit, a little bit more acidity. So the time that I drink Catherine, I normally drink Catherine during dinner because it's, as I said, it's fruit driven, a little bit more acidity. And then I drink Hillary. I'm a big cheese course eater, so I generally drink Hillary at the end of the evening because my palate is heavier, it's a little bit more tired. So I'll drink the Hillary at that point because Hillary is more fleshy, rich, round, etc. I think you guys have got the 16 or they got the 17, Susan?
Deanna, who has the Hillary? Tell us what vintage you have.
Oh,
16. Hold it up.
All right, so 16 was voted by the Wine Spectator as the best value Oakville Cabernet on the market. It got 93 points and it was incredible. We had so many, we sold this wine very, very quickly. The current release today is 17. I find 17 a little bit brighter, a little bit more acidic, juicy, but because of the value of this wine, we normally sell out pretty quickly. So if you're interested in the next vintage, please get a hold of Deanna because we're shipping 17, but we're already out of stock here in the winery. So
when you think about how it ages, do you think this is a drink till now, till when? How do you think about the aging of this wine? Of the 16?
Sorry, I couldn't see who spoke. Was that John?
It's
Yeah,
John,
it is.
but he's not in the picture.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I know.
You're
Okay,
better looking than I am. So,
so John, here's my look. I mean, I can tell you that this wine's going to last 25 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your question should be, Nick, how do you know? And my answer is because I've been working on the vineyard for 30 years. So the Wine Enthusiast came out. This is not a slam at the Wine Enthusiast, but it was interesting. The Wine Enthusiast came out with the 40 best winemakers under 40 years old, and each one of them said their wine's going to last 20 years. Well, how do you know? You haven't made wine for 20 years, let alone from the same vineyard for 20 years. Does that answer your question?
okay.
So, but here's a bigger reality story, because I live in California, you guys don't, but California is a lot closer to North Korea. So when we have the nuclear bomb dropped on us and we run to the bunker for 15 years, what are you going to take? When you show up with your one bottle of very well-known Oakville Cabernet, so Oakville includes Minor, Screaming Eagle, Harlan, Opus, Mondavi, Nickel, Faniente. I mean, you name them, they're all there. Scarecrow, they're all in Oakville. You show up with your bottle of $500, sorry, your $1,000, $2,000 bottle of Oakville Cab, and I show up with my 12 six-packs of Hillary. I'm going to be in that bunker for 15 years. You choose.
Very good. But in terms of your cellar wines, though, right? You cellar these. You have library wines, and I mean, every year, do you open a couple and just see where they are? Or
Absolutely. But unfortunately, because Hillary is what it is, I don't normally keep too much Hillary back. What I really focus on my Goldschmidt level and my higher end wines. So if you ever get a chance to try Goldschmidt or Goldschmidt Plus, those are the wines you really want to try. So if you think about Oakville, the best value Oakville on the market is Hillary. Okay. The second best value Oakville on the market is Mondavi Reserve Oakville. The third best value market, wine market on the world in Oakville is Game Ranch, and that's us. And I don't know if Susan has a bottle of Game Ranch in front of her. The Game Ranch would normally retail at $90 bucks, $95 for a Game Ranch. Game Ranch comes. This is the vineyard right between Screaming Eagle, Tench, Rudd, Groth, and she's also showing you that's an old bottle of Plus, but
that's all I had.
Okay, so the Game Ranch, if you just see that label without the plus on it, that's what you want. The
those available, Nick, Shirley Wine Club or at the winery. Where do you get this?
Vino Mas should be able to have some.
Okay.
If they don't have it, they can order it for you.
Okay.
The plus wine's a little bit more difficult. The plus wine has got a black label on it, and I only make 100 cases of that. And that retails at about 140, 150, which is still for Oakville is still an incredible bargain.
But almost 4 years in oak in the plus version, and there's an Alexander Valley and an Oakville, and they're both about 150 average on the shelf. And then here's the Alexander Valley and the Game Ranch. Again, these are different vintages.
Yeah, she's got the different label. They're not the same labels.
Yeah,
so the one on the right is the one that she's holding up on the right is the Yeoman. That's the current label. The one on the left she's holding up is an old label. But
this proves I'm sitting around drinking it though, right now.
But I have and then John, I have another wine that's very special above that. That's even though it's surrounded by neighbors that sell for $2,300, $2,500 a bottle, we have a wine that sells for $500.
Is that the Ultimatum?
Ultimatum, yeah. We only make about two. We only make 2 barrels of this. This is this one. It's called Ultimatum.
Wow.
It's got a map. It's got a map on it. No, it's pretty crazy wine. Anyway, that's what we do out of Oakville, and I mean Oakville is. I know that Rutherford has better reputation. In Rutherford you got wineries like Camus, but for me, I agree that Rutherford tannins are more grainy, more solidsy, whereas for me, Oakville is sweeter and rounder, and that's why I chose Oakville over Rutherford. I mean, you're talking about 2 fantastic appellations. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But Tocolone is part of Oakville. Pritchard Hill is part of Oakville. So, Oakville's a really interesting appellation. And what's interesting about Game Ranch is it's the only knoll or the only hill in Oakville, unless you're on Tocolone or Pritchard. So it's the only little bump, and that's what makes it unique. And that's why Screaming Eagle is on that hill. That's why Tench, Gargiulio are on that hill. And then Silver Oak is just to the west, and Groth and Plumpjack are to the north. So it's a pretty unique site. So, yeah. And I'll leave you my email address right at the end, John, so you can see it.
Okay, great, thanks.
But yeah, Deanna should be able to get anything except she would be able to get the Goldschmidt Game Ranch and Yeoman, and should be able to get the Plus.
Yeah.
But she won't be able to get the Ultimatum.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. So this is interesting. 90 is there.
That's 10.
90.
Oh, there. Oh, sorry.
I find it doesn't mean much to you guys, but one night Chelsea came home. Chelsea's doing a PhD in biology. The crazy thing about my children is they're all science. So one night they had an argument between which is more interesting, chemistry or physics. I mean, this is 5 children arguing about science. I'm like, but what happened was Chelsea came home. She decided that at university she wanted to do philosophy, etc. After about a year and a half of doing philosophy and whatever the heck else she was doing, she came home and said, look, I give up. Chemistry and math is so much easier. And all of my kids thought, you know what, she's right. And that's why they all do it. And so that was little Hillary. She's doing a degree in environmental engineering. And she's arguing with me about how much 10 mils is. And this is the problem with our society. we bring our children up on the imperial system and not on the metric system. So they actually don't know what 10 mils looks like, what 50 mils looks like, what 1 pound looks like, what 1 kilo looks like. And this is why the Americans and the British, they got together and they sent that satellite out to Mars and went poof. It was a $1.8 billion hole in Mars because the thing thought it was there. It arrived about 100 feet from Mars. The legs popped out and plummeted to the Earth. And the British called the Americans up and said, I thought you said left-hand through. And the Americans said, I thought you were talking metric. They didn't even realize that both of them were using the imperial system. Like, come on, man. Anyway, so we celebrate that. We have a wine called Yardstick that we made in celebration of this $1.8 billion hole on Mars. I don't know if Susan has it, but it's pretty funny. So anyway, just jumping back. So this wine just got 93 points. It's best value from Oakville. Deanna, what are you selling Hillary for tonight? $55. Very noisy there. I can't quite hear. But anyway, it's obviously a bargain. So this is Yardstick, what Susan's holding up. So that's a really cool wine that you can get as well. And it's a little bit better value than being pure Oakville. So if you come to when we all open back up and we can all travel, we'd really love to see you out at the Poorhouse, which is our tasting room in Dry Creek. So again, come to the center of the universe, which is Healdsburg. Now, Healdsburg is 1 hour north of the Golden Gate Bridge and very easy to get to straight up. Sorry?
Hour and a half, man. That traffic's crazy.
Sorry, an hour from the, well, right now there's no traffic. I can get to the Golden Gate Bridge in 50 minutes. It's unbelievable.
Plan more time.
And if you want to follow me, the best way to do it is on Instagram, Goldschmidt_vineyards. There's about 2,500 posts up there. I put up one. I probably put up a video every 2 or 3 days, and then there's a photo probably put up. But it shows where I am in the world and what I'm doing if you're interested. Right now, we've got a lot of pruning going on, so you'll see me pruning and drinking a lot, because when I come home from pruning in the cold, it's nice to have a nice glass of Cabernet. Trust me.
How cold is it in California right now, Nick?
Oh my God, it's freezing. It's like 50. No, when I'm out there, yeah, no, sorry. When I'm out pruning though in the afternoons, it's a little bit warmer today because we got cloud cover. But normally when I'm out pruning, it's in the 40s. And when you're standing, not moving, right now it's 46. But normally when I'm out pruning, it's usually 38, 42, something like that. So it's a pain in the neck. Anyway, if you don't follow Deanna, we're going to send these guys out. They're going to come out and destroy you guys. These are my kids behaving. I love Royce pouring the wine straight in his mouth. So yeah, we'd love to see you, and I really appreciate you guys spending time with us this afternoon. You've got my email address if you want it. It's nick@goldschmidtvineyards.com. But of course, you can get a hold of Susan or Deanna because they're the people that make things happen. Yeah.
Why don't
Deborah,
you make wine with your sons? I was curious about that.
Well, there's two. I'm very you look old enough to appreciate this joke because you're the same age as me. There's 3 things that don't sell: boys' names, dogs, and blue labels. I don't do those 3 things. So I have this sarcastic thing. And the number of times I've seen a blue label, oh man, when is the last time you walked into a store and said, dude, that looks like a really nice blue label, I'm going to buy that? Like 0. And then the other time, like, boys' names just don't sell. It's I know Josh sells, but it's cheap. Cheap as chip. I mean, there's not a lot of boys' names out there, so I don't do that. But my son, Luke, he is a winemaker, and he's got an amazing. He's probably got the best resume of any wine. I mean, his resume is Opus, Erasmus in Chile, where we've had 5 100-point wines, Louis Latour, Grange in Australia, Vega Sicilia in Spain, Nicholas Catena in Argentina. That's his resume. I mean. So yeah, he's going to be if he can absorb all that, he will be a force to reckon with. But yeah, I choose not to. I don't know, man. I have more fun with my daughters. Making wine with my daughters is far more creative and a lot of energy. A lot of energy. So, yeah, I don't know. I just chose not to make wines with my sons.
Any other questions, guys? Or do you
Either
have?
I'm going to have another glass of wine. I'm staying online. I'm not going anywhere. I've got another Zoom in 40 minutes.
Yeah, so I had totally blonde hair before my daughter was born, so I know exactly what you mean.
Well, I had here.
Thank you so much. This was great.
No, you guys are awesome, and yeah, it's what's the picture on my left ear? Oh, I'm sorry. So behind me, I'm from New Zealand, right? So that's the flag of New Zealand, and above me, I'm a big rugby fan and cricket fan. So rugby, the obviously the most famous rugby team in the world is called the All Blacks, and the All Blacks are from New Zealand. We don't have the World Cup right now. There's a long, painful story there, but for an island nation of 4 million people, it's pretty amazing that we can beat countries like England and Australia and South Africa, etc. So yeah, so that's I'm sort of I'm a big supporter of Play Rugby USA, which is a grassroots organization. We have 5,000 rugby players now across the country, mainly on the East Coast. And so we raise funds. And so they donated me 2 things. This one here is the 2015 World Cup signed by all the All Blacks that played in that match. And this is the gold medal winning Olympic 7-a-side. They play another game called 7-a-side. So this is a rugby jersey signed by the Olympic gold medal team from the last Olympics, which was what 4 years ago from last year, right? So 2016. So yeah. And believe it or not, in my backyard, I actually have a rugby field. I put in a grass field and put up a rugby post so that when we do the fundraisers at my house, we get these famous rugby players to kick balls over our rugby post. Yeah. Don.
I noticed on your sign you said Optima. We see Mike and Nicole a lot. We've known them for 1,000 years. Are you close?
Very close friends of mine.
Close geographically, I was.
Yeah, we're in the same tasting room, so we share a tasting room with.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, so we share with Optima.
Way to ask that. You're in that little area down there that's almost you can walk around and do tasting rooms.
Yeah, there's like 6 tasting rooms right there, and you can just walk around. We're friends with them all, except for one. I'll allude to that later. But if you walk into Mike Duffy's winery, we are about 80% of Mike's. So about 80% of what Mike does at his winery, he makes wine for us. So we also keep him in business that way. So he's become a good friend, him and Nicole both, and even their son, Danny. So Danny's also a young winemaker. And so I'm working very closely with Danny as well.
Yeah, Danny doesn't usually come back to Omaha, but the girl...
Nicole, I don't is Nicole got a boyfriend back there or something? She's there all the time.
Yeah, she's us.
Well,
they love Omaha. You loved Omaha when you were here at Biaggi's.
I thought I'd never been to Omaha before. Well, yeah.
Yes, I sat by you at a bar one night.
Hey,
well,
Nick
Susan was my escort.
Nick is coming back to Omaha. We got kind of behind with the COVID thing, but he does come to my market. Omaha's on the radar, like next in line.
Really? 2020, 1.5, 2?
I don't know, but it will happen. It definitely will happen. But look up the Poorhouse if you're out in California. That's what we have. We're only a 8-person business. You know, we're small. We're independent like Deanna, which is the whole point of all of you guys. We love you because you're supporting us and the small guys like us and Deanna, not the big corporations. It makes you so valuable.
Well, we're hoping to be able to come back to California. We come every
year to the wine country for like 30 some years. And we are hoping we can get back there this year.
Of course, the first time we came out, I had a fake ID. I mean, goodness.
What, you mean that was only what, 5 years ago?
Yeah, right.
Ah, Don, you're a very funny man.
So any other questions, guys? You don't need to stand if you don't want to, but he's drinking some wine. If you want to really terrorize him with a few questions, stump the winemaker. Let's go.
I've still got 6 inches to go.
Everybody good?
Right, I've tell you some sheep jokes.
Well, you got to have a sheep joke.
We have a sheep joke. What do you call an Australian with a sheep under this arm and a sheep under this arm? Menage a trois. You guys know we have a thing for sheep in New Zealand, right?
There you go. Oh, God.
We have 16 sheep per person, and they're all beautiful. All the ugly sheep live in Australia. But when you go out for dinner, you should always and they have lamb on the menu, make sure you ask where it's from. Because if it's from Australia, it's got less fat on it. They run faster there.
Hey!
Oh, he'll be telling your lines.